And thank you for my panel. Andrew's just joined us as well. Andrew Kaggia is an animator and a lead developer. So today we're talking about music meets advertising, film, television, and gaming. So I've been in the business of music publishing personally since 2012. We represent Shia Publishing from South Africa, which David is the managing director. We represent them in the region in Eastern Africa. And one of the things we do is synchronization. So synchronization is basically the use of music in advertising, film, television, and gaming. And on this panel, we have very important producers and customers of music for that use. Just to recap, so we have David, who is a publisher, and he'll be taking you through a presentation in a minute. Isaac works in advertising, so they're using music all the time for radio ads and television. Musyoka is a very well-known music producer in Kenya and in the region, and he produces music for film, for advertising, television. Then we have Josephine from South Africa, who also plays music in those uses. And we have Sarah Migwi from Protel that produce programs that use music. Andrew's in gaming as well, so we can look at the music in gaming. And then we have Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, who's going to talk briefly about the classification, where classification falls in the use of music in these areas. Okay, so we'll get straight into it with a presentation from the managing director of Shia Publishing Africa, David Alexander. Please welcome him.
As Mike said, I am from Shia Publishing in South Africa. We've been going for 21 years. We started off representing South African songs and songwriters. We started signing from Zimbabwe, people like Oliver Mtukudzi and Thomas Mafumo. And over the 2010 World Cup, I got excited about signing some writers from Cameroon who did Zangalewa, the song that was used as Waka Waka by Shakira. And after that, my passion with music on the continent grew and grew. So we've been here, we've signed Eric Wanana, Sauti Soul, Susanna Owio, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you who are writers and publishers, and we have a stand outside. Thank you. Let's roll the first ad.
So, what do you want for breakfast?
Start their day with something they'll all love. New Kellogg's Cornflakes Instant Porridge. The only creamy porridge made from delicious toasted Kellogg's corn for a taste like no other. Stir up a bowl of sunshine every morning with new Kellogg's Cornflakes Porridge.
So we've had the pleasure of representing Miriam Makeba and that song Pata Pata for many years. And the song is very easy to license, and a lot of products, a lot of film, TV want to use it on a regular basis. I've given you some background around our work throughout Africa and a bunch of African clients. Because we've become an expert at collecting money for songwriters from the African continent, we also represent a bunch of international companies. So independent companies like ourselves. Next slide, please. Who themselves in turn represent some great writers. People like Lord and The Weeknd with their company Songs Music, which was just recently sold to Cobalt. Bob Marley and Paul McCartney, who are signed to Cobalt. You get the idea. As an independent company, we look to do business with other independent companies. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into what the two rights are. You heard us play Miriam Makeba's Pata Pata. Essentially, there were two rights that you were listening to in addition to the visual right on the audio only. On the one side, you were listening to the master recording right. That was the artist who was singing, the producer who produced the production, and the label that paid. In the case of that commercial, it was a re-record done by the advertising agency specifically for the purposes of the advert. All they had to license from us was the publishing on the other side. The composition, written by Miriam Makeba. The lyrics were by Miriam Makeba, and I am struggling to remember who the composer is. It will come to me now. But we licensed that for about $25,000 for the TV commercial. So definitely for one single commercial for 1 year. When you compare that to the amount of money that you're receiving from a CD that sells maybe for $5, the writer is receiving 10% of that, 50 cents. That's $25,000 is a hell of a lot of money. You have to sell a lot of CDs for that. So over time, the hit writers make more money from licensing their song for use in film, TV, and commercials than they do from all of the albums that they sell. The gift of giving, of course, is that when that commercial flights on radio and television, they collect public performance from the collecting society that they belong to too. So Miriam Makeba happened to be a member of SAMRO, but if the writers were a member of COSON in Nigeria or PRS in the UK, they would continue to collect from there. All right, I'm going to skip this slide. I know that the doctor at the end has a time constraint, so we're going to move on and move on again. We'll get straight down to the synchronization, licensing. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's talk about the Kellogg's ad that we saw. What the advertiser was selling was porridge. How is it that he's going to make a connection between porridge and the audience? They want to make porridge sexy. So they're using the music as a vehicle for doing that. Because the music belongs to the songwriter, belongs to the artist, they're entitled to a share of the revenue. So it makes an emotional connection. It reminds the audience of a time and a place. It helps them identify with the product. And these are the reasons that the advertisers use music in their productions.
25th birthday, we're giving you 25 reasons why we love South Africa. Reason 2.
I love the song.
We all know the words to our national anthem.
I love the song so much. Kaggia.
And here's another reason to love South Africa. A quarter chicken, chips, and a limited edition bottle of Coke for only $39.90. Nando's, 25 years and still playing with fire.
Kalakata by Mendoza is another song that people love to use because it's crossed over. So it's not only a song that appeals to the young now, they play it at the rugby. It's played on all different radio stations, so whether it's adult contemporary or whether it's urban, they love to use in Kalakata. So again, the product was Nando's, trying to connect with a broad audience. When you're using television, it's a very broad audience for advertising. So you need a song that's going to connect with everybody who's watching TV at that hour. So the songs that are chosen tend to be songs that have been big hits, and big hits with a targeted demographic. Certain radio stations might choose songs that are vernacular, so specific only to the language of the listener of that radio station. But TV, of course, is much more broad, so they tend to go for songs that have got big, broad appeal. So the sync opportunities that we're looking for media for: cinema, film, television, games, and advertising. So what are the price points? So we showed you 2 South African songs that were licensed for the commercial. Depending on the audience, maybe the advertiser would like to use a big international song. These songs are quoted for in dollars, and I've given you there the fees for South Africa for a 1-year TVC. So you can see $30,000 to $45,000 per side. Remember I spoke about at the beginning the master recording right and the right in the intellectual property? If they're using the original recording, it's 2 times $45,000. $90,000 for 1 year for TV, for that commercial. Radio will be another $30,000. Internet, another $15,000. Public location, another $10,000. We did a license for a Bob Marley track. It was $200,000 a side. So big songs can command really big license fees. We move then to the big local hits. So in South Africa, if you want to talk to a purely South African audience, you'll use a big South African song like Mendoza or Miriam Makeba. Recently, I saw DSTV's been using Johnny Clegg. He's been a lot in the news because he's doing his final tour. A commissioned piece of music is when the advertiser doesn't want to necessarily use a piece of found music, a piece of music that's been released. They just need something that goes very well with their visual. But they need something that is specific. They want something that's unique to them. They don't want something that somebody else is going to use. So they go to somebody in studio, somebody like Eric. They'll say, Eric, here's my visual. Please, can I have a piece of music that's going to fit with that piece? And he'll write a piece for them, and there's the fee for that. Library music is music that is generally made available for film and TV use, and it's used on a rate card. A one-year fee, as you can see there, 600 Rand. It's not very expensive, but there's no exclusivity. So all of those other licenses can be exclusive for a year, exclusive to a product. There can be a holdback, as in they're not allowed to be licensed for a period after. Basically, the advertiser can say, I want to create an ecosystem around that song and my product. We did a Jeremy Loops commercial for ABSA, in which they used a whole lot of online material. So you could Shazam the song, and through that Shazam, it would send you to a website where there was biographic material, behind the scenes, the shooting of the commercial. So they created a whole ecosystem, not just the ad that flights on TV, but a whole story around how ABSA, big change, small notes makes big change. Thank you. We believe that local audiences want to hear their music reflected on film and on television. So we were the first to start a big South African music library. If you want to talk to us about getting some of your music into an African library, we're very keen to have Kenyan, Ugandan, Ethiopian, wherever you're from in the region. We're keen to extend the library. We want the broadcasters to feel that they are using local music when they're making local productions. In South Africa, we've got a local content quota that talks to who the producer of the TV show is, who the actors of the show is, but it doesn't talk to the music. And generally what we find is that the big international libraries are competing and getting their music used because it's cheap and easy to use. So we've started a South African music library that can compete with that. Thanks.
There are many ways to let your Ayoba shine this summer.
So as I'd opened with Pata Pata by Miriam Makeba, I wanted to close with Pata Pata, this time the Milk and Sugar mix. So this was a remix that was done by 2 German DJs and breathed a whole new life into the song. So 20 years after that first song released, suddenly it's back on the charts, it's back in the clubs, and it's back on the commercials. So another couple of 100,000 Rand for Miriam Makeba. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Excellent. So as you guys can see, there's a whole industry that is built around synchronization and the use of music and film, television, advertising, and gaming. We mainly think of it in terms of advertising, but there's a huge opportunity in film as well. Who here saw Black Panther on the weekend or is going to watch Black Panther this week? Yes? Okay, so Shia actually worked on, there's actually one piece of music in Black Panther from South Africa, at least one piece, yeah, that Shia looked at a sync on. And if you can actually see a lot of movies, sometimes we take it for granted, but there's a lot of commercial tracks in movies, and as well as what we call production music as well, which is background music that brings the mood to certain scenes. Has anyone ever watched a movie where the music has actually been taken out of it? Can you imagine what that would sound like and feel like? Okay, so music is a very important ingredient for, obviously this industry that we're talking about. So Dr. Mutua has to leave us, so I just want to get a reaction from him first. So Dr. Mutua, you're very famous for Kenya Film Classification Board in terms of the work that you do in classifying content that's being played in Kenya. Music is probably, I've seen the board commenting on music videos, but now from what you've heard in terms of the use of music in this area of the business, is there anything that we need to look out for as music producers in terms of its classification?
As Kenya Film Classification Board, we are very proud to be part of this and to see expo like this that it brings together various players, and especially the infusion of television, advertising, and music. I think by and large that brings about just everybody in the industry that we regulate. And I think in respect to the issues that you have raised, we are a regulator. Our role is basically to regulate, but we don't regulate in vacuum. We do understand that for regulation to make sense, then there must be creation, there must be development of content, and there must be other factors that come into play. As a regulator established under the Film and Stage Plays Act, Cap 222 of the laws of Kenya, our role is to rate and classify content to conform with our culture, our moral values, our aspirations, but the aspect of morality becomes key when it comes to protecting children from exposure to harmful content and ensuring that they're inducted to the right culture as they watch content and as they consume content. We also enforce the watershed period to ensure that content that is meant for adults is viewed by adults, but during the watershed period, which is in Kenya is between 5 in the morning to 10 in the evening, within that time, the content aired on TV is suitable for family viewing. The idea, like I said, is principally to ensure that as a people, we can have content that speaks to our culture and our national aspirations, that inspires and gives life to and meaning to what we believe as a people and what makes us who we are. And that is not to mean that regulation then should also overlook the other aspects of business. So I'm also very keen. I'm sure a lot of people will know me for, and I'm associated with banning, which I've never done, but I don't know where that came from. Probably I came to KFCB when that banning was taking place. They banned the Wolf of the Wall Street, 50 Shades of Grey, I think the stories of my life. And when I came in, people think I'm the one who did it. Actually, I do not even classify content myself. I have a team that does that, but most of that banning took place even before I came in. But as a person who is trained in communication, and a person who has also been working in the intellectual property world, having served at the Kenya Copyright Board for 7 years, I'm happy to see Mr. Kasanga was also a fellow board member at the Kekobo, and having been in the media for almost 25 years, and this is also my area of training. I think I'm very impressed to see the role that music is being given in all this, because I think music is cross-cutting. There cannot be, like you've said, a proper film that is devoid of music. There's a song, I think, in Kenya where they say, muziki ni sabuni ya roho. The meaning of that is that music somehow nourishes the soul. And whether you are in a funeral, whether you're in a wedding, whether it's we are celebrating the birth of a child, music is cross-cutting. And therefore, in an industry that has so much potential, I think then the element of music and promotion of the same and ensuring that we value what ingredients inform the kind of music that we put in. We've just seen the wonderful Pata Pata by Miriam Makeba, and the wonderful tunes that come from Africa, and Zangalewa. And I saw during the World Cup in South Africa, the kind of wonderful productions that were there during the opening ceremony, and that defined the entire 2010 FIFA World Cup in South Africa. So from where I sit is to say this is a commendable effort. I think with technology right now, there is need for us to even speak more about the issues of conventions and see how all these elements of film, because I deal with audiovisual, and when you talk about audiovisual, you're talking about basically both sound and also the motion pictures. And to that extent, then, also we regulate music, particularly music that has been turned into videos, and I think that's where how the discussions with the South Soul Melanin came in. We didn't ban melanin, by the way, at all. We were only creating the conversation, a discourse about the place and role of a woman, the way it was presented in that song, objectification of women as objects of sex. And I think that was more of an academic debate than even a regulatory issue. And I think people took it out of context. So mine is to say, as a content regulator, we support, and we have not had difficulties in the regulatory aspect of music. The regulatory aspect of film, is, in terms of infusing all those components, is what has been probably a challenge when it comes to the foreign content that comes to Kenya, and how the application of the 40 to 6% local content quota comes in, the aspect of piracy as well, and how people find it so easy to dump music. When I was serving at the Kenya Copyright Board with Japheth Kasanga, one of the veteran gospel musicians in this country, I remember a case that we took to the magistrate. First of all, it started with the police who arrested the guys who were pirating. And they were asking, do you have the original product? And when you say yes, they ask, so what is your problem? Because if this guy just dumped, they can't see where the crime was. And the magistrate, the same way, could not understand. And I think there's been the misunderstanding that music is like a voluntary activity. You just produce and give it to the community. It's a communal land where everybody possesses. And I think issues of intellectual property have not been given a lot of attention. I'm very happy that now Kekobo is putting structures in place to protect intellectual property. And as a board, we are very keen to say that we will also not classify content that is pirated. Actually, when I joined KFCB, my guys used to give classification stickers. They would be affixed to CDs, and we wouldn't care the content, whether that CD is stolen, provided you have rated it PG or GE. Our concern was just rating. And when I came in, I pushed a policy where we no longer classify music or videos that are pirated. And I think if we can work together and collaborate and bring in, promote the aspect of intellectual property in music, in film, in advertising, and ensure that people can get value for money, promote local content, I think that would help a great deal. I was just having an interaction with my brother here, and Sarah had the grace to show me some of the products that he has done, and the kind of hits that he has. It is 6 million something on some of the Superman products, animations that he has done. And I was saying from where I sit, some of the challenges that we have in saying we are exposing our children to bad content, especially from foreign countries or foreign cultures that are coming to Kenya either through technology and all this, we ban or we stop some of that, and we say it's not appropriate for us, it's not speaking to our culture, is giving the impression of our minds the wrong perspectives of life. But then we have no alternative content, and animation is the way to go. And I'm saying working with organizations like this and bring stakeholders together to think, how can we become relevant in the 21st century? And I will end my remarks with a book that I have read for the last 10 years, I think, or more, by Thomas Friedman. Where I come from, I don't know whether it's Friedman or Friedman, but whichever the case, you know the book, The World is Flat. And he talks about the flatteners that will make the world level. I know you know the story of Christopher Columbus, that the world is not flat. But Thomas Friedman comes in and says it is flat, and talks about technology that will flatten the world and the flatteners that will make all these convergences and make the realities of our time different from where we are coming from. In the era of technology, and in the era where you have content in your handheld devices, I think with the proper aggregation and the proper policy harmonization, it's possible to make our artists make money. It's possible to harmonize film, advertising, and music, and create a bouquet that helps all the players to make money. And as we do so, ensure that the rights and the responsibilities of all of us, those of us in creation, those of us in distribution, those of us in broadcast, those of us in regulation, that we are able to harmonize our thinking so that technology does not become a flattener and overtake what we want to achieve. Mine is to say thank you and commend Sarah and my brother, and hope that we will have more conversations to see how we can now create this alternative content for our kids and actually infuse our cultural dynamics into it, the way they have done with Miriam Makeba, and ensure that we promote our culture and we are proud of it, and we consume our own. The local content quota for me is critical. We must consume our own. And I think pushing it even beyond 60% is where we want to go as government. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mutua. Just before you leave us, I'd like to just say thank you again. And, you know, the reason I invited you here today is that often the industry misunderstands what you put out there on social media and the actions of the board. We also need to remember that the boards are not individuals. They're boards. They have regulations. But when a spokesperson puts something out, it's not only that person's opinion. He's also talking on behalf of the regulations and the boards themselves. From what you've said, I'm happy to hear that you no longer ban. That is now on record. We're live streaming on Facebook at the moment. And I know you've said it in a number of forums. KFCB does not ban. They do not censor. They classify. That's it. So that means produce your content as content producers, and have it classified. Dr. Mutua may have an opinion about it, like he had a personal opinion about melanin, but it's still playing. You know, it's out there. It's an opinion.
I'm a journalist by training. I practiced with the Nation for 9 years, and I just write all the time. So with technology right now, I always say with over 100,000 followers on Twitter and a similar number on Facebook, I'm a media owner. So I publish in my media. You know, the media, mainstream media is not the guys who are shut the other day. In fact, a lot of Kenyans didn't miss that, because with technology, if you have, you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter and you have as many numbers as I have, you are a media owner. And you can use technology to market your product and to sell your product. I push my ideas as Ezekiel Mutua from an academic point of view and a personal perspective of life, but that does not inform regulation. When we want to issue a statement on regulation, like we did with the Coca-Cola advert, test the feeling, it's a different ballgame, and we put it on a letterhead, and that will be communicated. Even on melanin, we issued a statement, it was not banning. And I want to emphasize, we no longer ban. I pushed that conversation myself, brought in the Kenya Law Reform Commission. We even visited the Committee of Parliament, and I made a case for aligning our mandate to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Article 33 that gives freedom of expression. What we do is to protect children, and in that respect, we put a lot of emphasis because they're impressionable minds, and what you show them is what will inform their perspectives. Some of the adverts like betting and gambling and the influence that they have on children, violent content, obscenity and stuff like that. But we restrict for adults, we don't ban. We say this is not appropriate for children. If you are showing it to adults have a right to make a choice. But when it comes to children, we protect them. But we don't ban content anymore. You are right. We are not going to ban. We are past that. We have sought the opinion of Kenya Law Reform Commission. We are reviewing now the Film and Stage Plays Act Cap 222 to ensure that it is properly aligned to the Constitution. And we want to assure the industry that the government is not in the business of curtailing freedoms or undermining creativity. You guys are creators. Creators are thinkers, and I think to the extent that there could be laws that are still archaic that criminalize, even the aspect of DJs that I saw were being arrested. I was the one who issued a statement last weekend to say, any DJ in a police cell, let me know where they are and I'll go and release them myself. And we defend you. We are not against creativity. We are only saying creating the context that will bring progress, will bring peace, will promote environmental conservation, will bring peace among people, that will not destroy. It doesn't have to be obscene to sell. You can create content that is clean, that is educative, that is informative. You can use your energies and your power of creativity. And I always say you are the only guys who share an adjective with God, or is it a noun? You are creators. You create, and you are powerful. You influence, you persuade, you push, you set agenda. Kindly use it to set the right agenda for society, particularly to influence our kids in the right way, to influence the right values for hard work, for love, for national cohesion. And as long as you are doing that, I can assure you, you have a champion and you have a defender in Ezekiel Mutua and in the Kenya Film Classification Board.
Thank you, Dr. Mutua. We now need to release you. But before you go, as the publisher of Sauti Solo, I want to sincerely thank you for your comments on Melanin, because it meant they got more views. The controversy really helped, so thank you so much. Yes, you've been fantastic panelists. Thank you so much. Please thank Dr. Mutua. We'll see him another time. And thank you for ensuring that KFCB is a development partner for our industry. Thank you. Okay. All right, so I'd like to build on that, and to production, I'd like us to have a look at some of Eric Musyoka's work with the use of music and advertising. Can we have that clip?
Watching, there's something for everyone at Betting. Betting, cheza nasi, bet nasi.
Thank you. Well done, Eric. Round of applause for Eric Musyoka. So, Eric, you've been doing this for like 20 years. So, you don't look it though. Tell me, what was the journey on this? Just take us through the quick steps in terms of the phone call from the client and to the end result.
Generally, what happens with this kind of job is what we call work for hire or commissioned work. So, unfortunately, I only own the intellectual rights, not the sound recording to that. And the client met me with a brief. Actually, this project was a sound design-driven project. Yeah, so there's a lot of football actions, and it was on that basis that I even got the job to do the sound design for it. Then we ended up creating music around the sound design. So they wanted a rough, authentic African urban song. And coincidentally, the song they gave me as a demo was Weka Weka by P Unit. They told me, we want something like this. I was like, yeah, I created that. So that's how the call came about. And from that project, that is like the 13th version of the song. Yeah, so with the problem with agencies, let me not call it a problem. When you have an agency, a production company, and the main client, ideas are always bouncing off. And they agree on somebody likes this aspect, somebody doesn't like this aspect, you change that. Now somebody doesn't like this aspect, they're like, we prefer the old one. So by the time you're done with it, you've combined all the changes and iterations of that project into one. then of course the ONGEA at the top will be like, hey, we need to go on air. That is the final version. Yeah, so it's very demanding, especially technically and creatively, because you have to try and create something that is impressionable to the right audience. And unfortunately for us in this market, agencies don't like using original music, like in South Africa. And I was also part of the Here Is To Us, the Tusker project, the commercial for Tusker that used Slim Ali's job. I didn't write the music. I helped in sourcing the sounds and sourcing the samples for the project. So, and I got that job because of a song of Octopizzo called Something For You that had used that sample. So they saw my name on the YouTube video as one of the guys who had produced for it. So it could go either way. They could give you a song you can kind of fashion your music from, or they can tell you come up with something completely different. So the client requirements are vary a lot.
Okay. Musyoka used a term there in terms of sound design. Yeah, it sounds a bit technical. What's the difference between sound design and music production?
When you see Mariga kicking the ball, when you hear the kachang thing, sharpening the knife, I don't know what it's called, that kachang thing, the throwing of the ball, from when you look at the window shot, there is something that goes, then it lands on the beat. So that is part of sound design to enhance the motion. And the foot kicks, the guys running in the corridor. Actually, after we shot the commercial, they brought the commercial back in, and I had to get those players back in. Of course, I played Mariga, and the other guys played themselves. So you go and record the footsteps, the kicking of the ball, and then like a week later after we shot the commercial, I went to Maringo, where they recorded the actual commercial and recorded the ambience of the place, you know, like the night shots, the Mutua guys, so that you infuse all those into the commercial and make it very, very realistic. You may not know what's happening, but if you remove all those things, that commercial doesn't sound the same completely. They may be very subtle, but they are very powerful emotionally, and they make your mind create a complete picture of what is happening. And that's why movie guys and serious producers go to the length of even replacing the dialogues in some of the productions, yeah, to make it as realistic as possible and to make it as clean as possible. So that is the sound design that we did for that project. Even the car, the slamming, when you listen to the introduction of that sequence, it has this. That is imitating the plane landing. You know, we didn't want to use a real aeroplane sound, so we used a synthesized sound that is musical to feel like the plane is landing and give it this tension of Mariga has arrived home, so it's a big thing. So that's what sound design does. So you have to be very creative with the use of sound.
Thanks, Musyoka. And just a final question for you. So you've done it for this advert, but you also do this for film, documentaries, television. Anything else?
Yeah, mostly television. And actually, David owes me money. They collect my royalties from South Africa through Shia Music. So when we do these projects, we license it with them, and production companies create what we call cue sheets so that they're able to know where the royalties are going to be, the broadcast royalties are going to be paid to. So it's very, very important that you have your paperwork right for these kind of jobs. Yeah.
Thanks, Musyoka. Okay, so now from Kenya, we're going to go to South Africa, and we're going to see some work that's been done by Janong Sound Design. And we have Josephine, the executive director, here with us. If we could just play that clip.
We took a random commercial we liked from the internet and stripped the sound away. Wait. Let's compose some music which helps tell the story.
I'm shaking and my nerves are shot. I swallow and my words get stuck. I'm ready to jump in, and I
Nice. But let's see what happens when we go straight up sound design. Interesting, but it lacks emotion. Let's go back to music. Well, that works. Now, to finish off, I'd like to try something fresh, contemporary and unexpected, and let you decide which works best.
I need something from you.
Excellent. Round of applause for Janong. So we saw like 3 steps in the production there. So who felt it? Did you feel it more when the music kicked in? Yeah? It's amazing, right? What music can do to us in terms of its impact and link to visual. Just want to play, so there we had the sound design, we had some production music, and then we had a commercial track, all thrown into one, yeah? Do you want to talk to that, or do we share the next one as well?
Sure, I can talk to that.
Let's talk to that quickly.
So I'd like to first just explain how our company is set up. So by trade, I am a brand strategist. I build brands. And what we've done is, what my colleague was saying is that we, as producers and strategists, we get briefed by clients, and then there's other third parties that are involved and a lot of people, and by the end of each and every single project, you end up, putting out work that is not necessarily what the original brief was. So what we have done as a business is that we have fused brand strategy and pure sound, music, sound design, and put together what we call Janong as well as Hey Papa Legend. So, which means that we are, responsible for what the sound of the brand looks like over and above what it looks like. Because most of the time, marketers, brand owners only care about the look and feel, and then the sound is something that comes at the end. Miles and Ross, so you heard Ross's voice, who was explaining the sound design element and showing the 3 different aspects that you looked at there. They sit with brands and they always get called in right at the end of a job, and they get told, here's the type of emotion we're looking for. Either, come up with a brand new song from scratch, or, use something that we know of or something that's library music. And what we want to do now is we're working directly with brands in South Africa, and now we're opening up our services and are looking for collaborations throughout the continent to offer our services, not just, music in isolation, but also remembering that there's always a brand strategy that informs what a brand looks like or what it sounds like. And that's obviously to drive emotional connections with other consumers, if it's in a brand context, or audience if it's in a film context, because Fortunately, as a business, we have received film briefs as well. And something that's also quite notable with our team under the Hey Papa Legend guys is we've received last year a gold pencil from the One Show Awards in New York, as well as in 2016 we were nominated as Cannes film finalists. So just to give you some background around how we set up and how we structured.
Fantastic. I just have before we do the next one, I just have a quick question for Isaac. So Josephine's talking about what a brand looks like, but now also what a brand sounds like. Are we there in Kenya yet?
You see, every brand has their own different sound. That's my view. I guess sometimes, as Musyoka said, you find that brands are not willing to go the longer mile of involving this whole process. We take shortcuts. And so you find that in the course of doing that, the brand also loses because they're trying to save on cost. So Musyoka, for us to be able to go through the whole process, probably it's going to cost a few bucks more. But because you want to save on cost, you find that people get their sound off Envato, get this free $2, $3 kind of sounds off the internet. And you actually find that on TV. So you find that the brand loses in the cost. So I guess this is a good conversation because I guess now brands then should consider this kind of a process, which for production is a very key process. They should go through it so that they, in the long run, don't lose who they really are as they try to cut costs, so to speak. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. I hope we can change things today from this panel.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So we have another clip for Janong. This is now an advert that they worked on.
Josie, it molds me, it breaks me, it lives and breathes you in. So tonight, we're heading for the Josie City Lights to find the beat.
454 on the best drive. Volkswagen had tweeted us. They were so impressed with Quest's freestyle over us. They wanted the two of them to do a collab. They were challenged to find the Josie sound. The 011 beats, the sound in the new Polo beats. Sounds have been spread across Josie landmarks by VW. They now need to find them and build a track.
Okay, cool. I've got some piano. Okay, what is this next? Drums.
Hands in the air now.
Georgia, these speakers are sick. Alright, I'm just checking out the Facebook feed. Yeah, no, the offenses says for lyrics, Josie, my nocturnal city.
Josie, my nocturnal city.
Yeah.
That's a good lyric. Life illuminated, we come alive at night, cause the lights are what you make them. The city never sleeps, nocturnal way of life.
We never see the sheets, toss and turn, pay the price.
Let's see how the car effects sound.
This is the city of gold. It can be gritty and cold. This is the city of kings who sit on the throne and make it their own. Look at how bright the lights are. Ntwana, the shine defines us. Ntwana, these lights don't blind us, even when powers try to divide us.
Look at the key, right?
It's not coming together right, is it?
No.
Because I need this right. I really need this right.
Yeah. Hey, how about that beatboxer guy?
Yeah.
Josie.
See, I grew up around here, made my first song around here. Yeah, I made my demo and got my deal and got to perform around here. See that corner right there? I used to spit rhymes right there. Had little ciphers right there, freestyling all night right there.
Yeah, I've been feeling like everything's feeling right. Hop up in the car and disappear in the city lights. Yeah, in the city lights. I I say lately I've been feeling like everything's feeling right. Hop up in the car and disappear in the city lights. In the city lights.
Hands in the air, now go.
Go loco, loco, go loco, loco, go loco, loco. Hands in the air now. Go loco, loco, go loco, loco, go loco, loco. Hands in the air now. George, George, George. Hands in the air, air, George, air, George, George. Hands in the air now.
We're about to play it right now on the bass drive. GP, are you ready? Let's go!
DJ Sexy. George. Hands in the air now.
Wow, I thought that was an ad. It's a music video.
I realized that was quite long. Thank you for allowing us
No,
to
it's
show.
great. It's a new direction, and I mean, we didn't even. Did anyone know it was Volvo until the end? I mean, you knew it was a car.
VW.
Yeah?
Huh? Volkswagen.
Sorry. Sorry. Okay, let me update my vocab. All right.
I'd love to talk about this campaign. So the beauty about this campaign is that it's very insight-led. So strategically, the client brief is how do we create awareness for the new VW Polo amongst the youth audience? So it's a brand everyone knows, but how does the brand engage the target market in a way that is relevant to who they are? So a lot of the consumer insights is that we know, number one, that we have what we call the Afrillennials, which is our African millennials. And specifically, this was a regional campaign that was Joburg-based or Gauteng-based. And it was quite integrated from a channels perspective. It was digital. There was a lot of co-creation where the target market was invited to, share what their thoughts are or particular lyrics. And who you saw in the ad was Questa, who's a well-known rapper, as well as Ross McDonald, our sound designer, through Papa Legend and Janong. And they came up with a song that used co-creation as an element, and it was integrated digitally as well as on radio at the same time. And these are the type of campaigns that we're looking to do that involve, our listeners, our audiences, as opposed to, we always, come up with work ourselves and then we put it out. So we really like, putting music at the forefront and, enabling our audiences to also collaborate with us and collaborate with brands, because it really builds a stronger emotive connection. It really builds that relationship that most brands are looking for. And it's a different way of, campaign, using music in campaigns.
Fantastic, thank you. And how long has it been on air, and what's been the result for the client?
It's been now, this is going to be the second year. It's been, the third year. It's already been 2 years. Locally, it's received awards from Lurie's and a few nominations from other awards. The uptake for the client was that there was a lot of brand recall. They did get a lot of inquiries from from quote and test driving perspective. So they really did achieve their targets in terms of from a sales objectives. But I think the bigger job that was done was just building that brand love and that relevance, bringing up the brand against the new entrants in the market that have very hard sell, price-orientated messaging. So it really has done very well for the brand, both financially as well as from a brand love aspect.
Thank you, Josephine. Okay, so now I'd like you to take it to Kenya and talk to Sarah Migwi, Managing Director at Protel Studios. Before starting her own business, I think I met Sarah at Level 1 back in the day, then worked at Endemol, did some work in Nigeria, also Uganda, Kenya, so quite a large number of productions across the continent as well. But now at home with her own company, Protel Studios. Can we see some of their work, please? Okay, anyway, you can tell us about the program and the importance of music.
Okay, probably could start first. Mike, thank you so much for this invitation. I could probably start by just talking a bit about Protel. Protel is a 360 content production company. We usually say we eat, breathe, sleep, and we are marinated in content. So we're all about content, and the content we produce ranges from, we do quite a bit of TV commercials, So I mean, what they're talking about in terms of commercials and all really resonates to what it is that we do. We also do a lot of TV programs. Some of our TV programs are like The Real Housewives of Kawangware, which has been one of our most successful local dramas here. We've done quite a number of corporate, commissioned TV programs. So like the Pambazuka National Lottery, where we were doing a live show every Wednesday and Sunday. We also have a sports program called Sports Central. So we do quite a bit of TV programs that we usually push more for airing on the local free-to-air channels. So music is a really important and strong part of our production process. I'd also like to add in terms of the commercials, you asked the question in regards to sound design, if we're there. I believe we're there, and I think we all have a role to play, even in terms of clients trying to cut down budgets, that we need to push them for us to be able to get or the quality to that level that we're talking about. So all the productions we do, even in regards to the TV commercial, we actually do not take anything that we cannot do sound design on. We stopped even doing library music because each communication needs its own feel, its own music to be able to communicate, adequately. And we've all talked about the importance of music. But the more important part for me is the emotional connection. If your communication does not have that emotional connection with the viewer, then it cannot even be memorable. So you're not able to achieve your objectives. And it's the same thing with our TV programs. Our TV programs, like the dramas, you've got a lot of, you have to create the mood depending on what it is that, depending on the scene. So music is very integral. And like I said, we don't do library music. We have an in-house audio team that does all our audio design on all our products. So I remember when we started, we used to call it infusion of sound effects, but it's no longer just sound effects. It's actually use of sound effects. It's now that the complete sound design of content. So, and irrespective of what kind of content you're producing, whether it's a drama, whether it's a game show, that excitement, that emotion, that mood can only be achieved by the use of music.
Fantastic. So basically, you decided to in-house your music production so that music would be seamless to all your productions that you're working on at the moment.
Yes, we do quite a bit of it in-house, but at the same time, Musyoka is also one of our biggest partners when it comes to sound design, as well as music production. So we work very closely with Musyoka, and also depending on what the client needs, there's some briefs that come that I can clearly tell David Hunter, who's our audio producer in-house, would not necessarily be able to do an amazing job. But I know if I get Musyoka to do it, Musyoka will crack it. Yeah? And like Musyoka said, by the time you're done with a communication, like a commercial, for example, you have done like 10 different variations of the brief by the time you're able to achieve what it is. I'll give you an example, since we are talking about betting companies. We've done, I don't know if you've all seen the Sport Pesa Tujiamini campaign. That was our production. So, and it was, and for me, that really, even the client, at the point when you're telling the client, look, because client will come and say, we want a jingle. I tell them, it's not a jingle you need. Yeah, because most of the time the client will say, I want a jingle, even before you've actually produced the commercial, for example. So for us, we always push our client back and we say, look, let's first shoot. Then when we get into post, then we will be able to finalize the audio work around it, which is now the sound design. So we're moving from the traditional jingle, now into a complete sound design. And then now, when you're able to, now once we do the sound design, we tell the client, okay, now that we have identified the sound around this communication, now we can get you the jingle from this, which you can be able to use on radio or your events and all. So it's the same thing with our shows. Each of our shows, or each show that you watch on TV, has a very distinct sound, such that even if you're in the kitchen and it starts, you know your TV show has started just by the audio design around the TV programs. Yeah.
So essentially, what you're saying the industry is moving towards is having very clear audio identities for the brands, and there's a starting point of actually creating a strategy around audio, the same way you create a strategy around image and brand. Is that the direction things are heading?
That's the direction things are heading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just as a follow-up question, if you compare Kenya to a lot of other markets, in East Africa for that matter, there's not a lot of commercial music, pop music that plays on radio that's taken into adverts. I mean, we've seen Pata Pata here, synced at least, 3 or 4 or 5 times. Those sort of evergreen tracks that turn up in adverts, we don't really see that in Kenya and in the region. What's the issue for the brands? Is it because they want their own identity, they don't want to ride on a commercial track? Is it a cost issue? Is it a misperception? Are we not selling it well enough? What do you think the issue is, Sarah?
From my perspective, and I expect some some input from my colleagues here, it's a combination of many issues. One, clients, yes, want their own identity. Yeah, there's a lot of clients want to be able to say, this is my brand. I don't want it to be mixed with any other brand, so they want their own identity. But the other thing, and I might be short here, is I worry about our culture as Kenyans, and even in terms of our culture coming out in our music. I hear a South African song, and I know immediately it's a South African song. I struggle with us here in Kenya. We are very talented, but we do not have that one sound or that, that kind of music that you're able to say that's a Kenyan song. We tried with Kapuka, but you see with Kapuka, you listen to different Kapuka songs and they all sound very much the same. Yeah, so I think we still have quite a bit of work. I don't know if Musyoka will agree with me on this one. we still have quite a bit of work to do in terms of identifying that Kenyan sound and that Kenyan music. And then also in terms of a lot of the songs that are a hit, also in terms of what Dr. Mutua said, it's also in terms of the message that is being communicated. So there are those that, yes, do work, but we don't have as many. But I also have a bone to pick with all of us Kenyans, because we are also not big supporters of our own music and our own artists here in Kenya.
Thanks, Sarah. Let's have a reaction from Musyoka.
And the fourth reason. I agree with partly most of the stuff, but from experience, I've dealt with a lot of agencies, and one of the biggest issues that agencies here don't like using Kenyan music is because the Kenyan Songwriters Association is not an organized system. Like, if a client wants to use a song, by the time they identify the correct people to get the licensing from, it's a mess. So clients tend to fear that kind of backlash. We don't have a place whereby these clients can go and collect Kenyan music. I've gotten requests. Like, there was a big campaign for a company in the country, and they wanted to use one of the songs that I had produced, and this has happened like 4 times. They come and tell you want to use this song. The moment you contact the other people involved in that project, they start asking for ridiculous amounts of money. They become very unrealistic. Then the artists are like, sanataka kututumia. You're being paid $1 million, Bob, that you didn't have. Yeah? So the client just backs off. The moment they start hearing those kind of things, they're like, we don't want lawsuits. We don't want to deal with unrealistic people. Let's abandon it. Eric, create for us something. And so artists end up losing usage because of such things. Because we are simply just not organized, and we don't respect the business side of things.
And just to add to what Musyoka said, so if you find yourself, a lot of clients, when we find ourselves in that situation, the client will say, take that as a reference. I want a track that sounds close to that. So you see, and then now the artist ends up losing. But one of the things I'd also like to add,
if given the chance, the client is 100% willing to use that song if they are dealing with a reasonable person.
Yes.
If, for example, there's a song I produced for just a band called Hahe. it's the most synchronized Kenyan song. The most synchronized Kenyan song ever. Why? Because I'm not a difficult person to deal with. And Just a Band is not a difficult band to deal with.
But on that song, the song stands out in terms of the feel and how it is, how it was produced. It's not similar to anything else that is within the market.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So, and I think that's a good point, because we've actually received briefs with a reference track for one of our composers and been told, go and make something like that. Yeah, so it's not only, and we don't even know if they've had the conversation with the original artist. It could be just that our industry has an image now, because there have been enough of those situations. Agencies and clients just know if I talk to the artist directly, they're just going to be difficult. So let's go and make our own.
Yeah. But I would also like to commend you, Mike, and the rest of your colleagues, because you're really working very hard to try and organize the music industry. Yeah, and with the formation of Mpake, I am seeing that all that Musyoka has said, I mean, I think that will come to be sorted out. Because the other issue was in terms of if you want to be able to license a track, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? That was the other thing. But today, if it's something I'm doing around music, I know all I need to do is contact Mpake. They'll be able to come back to me and tell me, this is a procedure. Okay, for this one, this is synchronization, this is how it works. This is who you need to be able to talk to. Previously, we had a body who would say, yes, we will give you the license. So they do give you the license and you pay for it. Then eventually the artist comes running after you and says, look, you've used my music without my permission. Yeah, but you come and tell them, look, but I have a license. They say, no, but I am not under that body. You know, so there was a lot of confusion within the market. And I'm really looking forward to now see that transformation, which you're really working hard to do in terms of now that organization of the music industry. Because once we do get organized within the music industry, the potential is huge. There's a lot we can be able to achieve within the industry.
Thank you, Sarah. So last but not least, Andrew. Can we just play something from Andrew, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about him. Andrew has more hits on YouTube than all the musicians in this room put together. And this is his track. Play it, play it, play it. Okay, I don't know what's happening, but we'll play it after this bit. Andrew has had this video. Here we go. Try again. Okay. I think you get the gist. Thank you, guys. In roughly 2 years, Andrew, or a year and a half?
Let's say a year and a half.
Year and a half? 86 million views?
Yes, 86
the
million.
Biggest YouTuber in Kenya. Huh? And that's for his work and animation, which you're just seeing there. If you go to Hero Smashers, it's a YouTube channel, and you'll see different animators from around the world of different levels. And I can see why his actually has the most hits, or one of the most hits, because of the fantastic work he's done. So congratulations, Andrew. You're
Thanks.
doing Kenya proud.
Thank you.
Okay. So today we're here more so talking about the music element as well, and the sound design. So we heard some stuff in there. Is this stuff that you also compose, or do you seek a composer for it? And what's your process? And what do you see as the future of music and the animation work that you're doing and the animation work that's happening in Kenya?
So for the music, there's this website called Audio Jungle. Because the nature of these animations, first I started this channel out of passion. So I really did not have a planned budget for this. So I just looked for some good sounding music, I put it on. But the sound design, that I worked on myself. But for the latest video, if you watch it till the end, it has DNA on it at the end credits. So what I'm planning to do is for each of, the projects that come next. Try to have a local artist at the end of each of them. Because okay, fine. First, this video has about 86 million views. Most of them are not from Kenya. But that does not change the fact that people will be keen to, to listen to music that they have not heard before. So like in my latest video, which I released last week, which, DNA is on it, when people from the US are watching that, they want to know who is this, who's behind this. This is not something we've had before. And so that's basically my strategy. When it comes to the future of local music in relation to these particular animations I do, I happen to do gaming as well, game development. There's one project that I recently finished for a client, and it has four unique Kenyan tracks. And the strategy is to have, for every project I work on, to at least have 2 to 3 different local musicians on it, just as a way to and it does not have to be musicians that we've heard of before.
Yeah, please give him a round of applause. This is a fantastic way to promote the music from Kenya and from East Africa.
Yeah, so it does not have to be, musicians that we hear on mainstream all the time. As long as it's good music, it's fresh. That's the plan.
Fantastic, Andrew. I'd like to just come back to David. If we could just understand generally, do we know the value of the sync industry in these areas in the world, and what percentage Africa is of that?
Africa accounts for 1% of the global music market. So Africa is really, really tiny. And probably of that, between South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, they account for 90% of that 1%. So it's very little that kind of falls outside of those territories. Definitely, I think that the big opportunity is there for music to be used globally. The problem is, as has been pointed out before, that there is uncertainty around where those rights are. In the case of a global music track, there's one record label. You can Shazam the piece of music. It will come up with the credits. You can see who all the writers are. You can see who all the publishers are. And you can go out and you can get a license and you can have certainty. Some of these turnaround times for TV, film are very quick. We get a brief and we expect it in 24 hours to produce a piece of music that is on point. And we have to be able to clear both sides, the recording and the rights in the publishing. So we have to sift through all of the music that we have, find stuff where we know we can deal with the record label, with all of the composers, that there aren't missing shares, that there isn't going to be one of those artists who's going to come out of the woodwork and say, hang on a second, I didn't give permission. So often the US, the Canadian, the European companies, they're very scared to use African music because of all the experience that they've had in the media of having used it and then being accused of copyright infringement. So bringing together the industry, making sure that there's certainty around who the role players are, who the record label is, who all the composers are, who is able to issue the license. Very important.
Okay. Isaac, I'd like to ask you from an advertising agency point of view, do you also have that challenge in terms of having confidence in the music you want to use in your different adverts and productions?
Well, yeah, the challenge does appear, but I guess in most cases it's not really my challenge. It's usually a challenge mostly for the client. Our work in most cases is just to advise. The client at the end of the day is one who then makes the decision on what kind of music they want to use. But I guess with the kind of systems that Siox is talking about and Sarah, once we have that in place and once it's easy to access a certain kind of music, then maybe we will not have all this back and forth. At the point when we get to post that we need to choose what kind of score, what kind of music we need to use at the at the end of any art that we're creating at that point in time. Yeah.
Great. So, I mean, I hope as one outcome of this panel that we'll see more local music being used in advertising, film, television, gaming. Andrew's already started. That's fantastic. Okay, I think it's time for some questions. We have time for about 2 or 3, 4 questions. The mics are around here. We'll go with Rab Bakari first. Thank you, Rab, for coming all the way from the States.
Yes, Rab Bakari. With my new venture called PHAT, I'm an agency for many creatives, mostly music business people. So this is to the panelist that speaks about advertising industry. Eric talked about works for hire, and then other people talked about synchronization and everything. A lot of my clients, they understand that as musicians, they're making money from either doing performances or corporate deals and corporate ambassadorship, corporate sponsorship. But many of them now want to receive money from their creative works or their intellectual properties. Can you explain, just briefly, each one to the audience, and maybe myself, related to Kenya and South Africa, which one benefits more, the work for hire or licenses and receiving residuals for the rest of your life, possibly? Anyone can take this question. Yep.
Thanks. So let's have a reaction from Musyoka and then from David.
I would say it's a balance. It's a balance depending on the kind of music that you've done. I mean, for me, I've been lucky enough to benefit from both synchronization, licensing, and work for hire. But I'm beginning to see the shift towards more synchronization than work for hire. Yeah.
I think in South Africa we've seen budgets under pressure. The age of the big shotgun approach commercial, where they want a big international track. It's very few brands that can afford to pay a couple of $100,000 for a big piece of music. So a lot of those adverts are now going to commissioned writers. So people who are, yes, selling out their master rights, but as Eric points out, they're holding on to their intellectual property rights, and that gets converted on the back end if you have a CMO that is able to collect from the global PRO system. So when Mpake has reciprocal agreements with PRS, and that commercial plays in the UK, PRS will pay Mpake the money for Eric, and he'll get the residual rights for those commercials. We had a client, he just passed away last year. He did the tagline for MTN, Everywhere You Go. And what we did was we were able to break out every commercial into the found piece of music, the commercial piece that was licensed, and then the tagline. So we were allocating 15 to 25% of the time to the tagline. And even though he'd sold out the master rights, he retained the intellectual property and then received a piece of that. He received a couple of $100,000 as a payout for that. So it can definitely be worthwhile working under commissioned works for hire.
Thank you, Musyoka and David. Okay, one or two more questions? We have one over there. Just stand and tell us who you are, please, and what your question is and to who.
My name is Oscar Chilumo. I'm a performing violinist, recording. My question would be to the panelists who have agencies. How often do you use live music when you're dealing with your projects? And if not, why is it not as much as possible? Because most of the productions I've seen are from producers. Thank you.
Maybe just for some clarification, what do you mean when you say live music?
Like, how often do you get live musicians to record for the projects?
Well,
seasoned musicians, guitarists, yes, drummers, something of that sort.
Well, again, I would speak from my perspective. You know, we are a digital agency, so much of the work we have to do, again, it's an issue really. For us, it's always an issue of budget. So it's pretty much the same category with Andrew. Audio Django, the likes of Envato, I spend much time on those kind of streets because, to be honest, again, that's what our budget can really afford us to have. So that's always in our pitch, so to speak. Our pitch is always glorious, but our execution is always brought down by issues of us. So many pitches we have proposed that we actually get artists of that kind. Sometimes not even artists that are known. The guys you find at Alliance, guys who already have some really good sound, that you feel like this sound really make a good kind of sound bed for this kind of ad, but you find the client saying no. Initially it's a yes, but as you have the third, second, fourth meeting, you realize you're going to find yourself at Envato. So you just open an account that the password is your name, and you never forget. Yeah.
On our end, we are beginning to use a lot more live because there are certain sounds you really can achieve Like, for example, a guitar. Whenever I go into the audio studio and you say, okay, let's just add some guitar here, there's certain sounds you can't get from the computer unless you actually played live. So we're beginning to use a lot more live musicians, in studio for the creation of a lot of the music that we're doing.
I spoke briefly about the music library, and I think what they were referring to here is the opportunity to use a music library simply because it's easy, it's cheap, it's online, you can audition a couple of the tracks, you decide that's the one you like, you download it, you put it on your production, and it's done. There's no licensing issues. There's nothing wrong with having live musicians making their own music library and having them distributed via a library such as ours. So then you get the best of both worlds. You're getting the live band producing the library track. Even the tracks that didn't make it onto the album, the outtakes, they can be cut down into pieces that work for commercials or work for background and film and TV. And that's all live work, and that money will go back to the composers of that music.
David, on that point, it's one of the things I wanted to say here is we need to have a lot more library music created from here. Whenever we're looking for library music, we don't have any library music available from Kenya. So I want to urge you, music producer. Sorry,
Mike has mine.
He has yours.
Share it with her.
I want to urge the rest of the music producers here. Any of the free time you have, don't wait for people to come. Just keep creating. And I assure you, someone out there will find use for your music. All right? And David has rightly said, he has a platform available. Whatever you create, he'll be able to make it, to publish it for you.
I'd just like to add, on our end, we are fortunate enough that our sound engineers are able to play instruments, but we're also very open to collaboration. Often we get briefs and we are looking for fresh new sounds or fresh new talent to collaborate and work with. So you find that we send one client brief around to our network of artists or musicians that we are aware of, and we'd very much like to get in touch with more and, be aware of what other talent is out there that we can collaborate with.
Fantastic. Okay, one last question from the audience.
I'm Gibson Mawera from the Technical University. We are talking about budget. How much, for example, is your budget for what we've seen, like some of the jingles, we've seen the adverts, and then what is the percentage that you allocate to the music itself that you use? Because there's a lot of video, there's a lot of acting, there's a lot of set, there's a lot. But what is the percent? What's the budget line, and then what is the percentage of that goes into the music, so that we can understand our stake in the music?
Thanks, Gibson. That's a very good question. Can you take that, Sarah, from a local perspective? What percentage of the budget you're working with goes into music for different levels of productions, if it varies?
It's not calculated. I can't give you a percentage, because what really determines the cost of a production, like for example a TV commercial, is how many days of shoot, the number of cast, the locations and what. So every TV commercial or communication has its own budget based on those resources that have been allocated to it. But music on its own is always its own line item. And that line item, what determines the cost of the music, number one, is the producer who's working on it. If it's Musyoka has his rate of how much he'll charge for composition of the music. He has got the rate in terms of the voices. If you want unknown voices, he'll tell you this one. If you want people who are not, our well-known artists, he'll tell you this how much it will cost. If you want like P-Unit on the track, P-Unit has their own fee that they would charge for it. If you want Sauti Sol also have their own, their own charge. So it's really dependent on, number one, who the producer is, who's producing the music, and who are the people who are singing on it. And then if it's, for example, there's some music where, like we said about using, musicians, that also has its own costs. All right? So it's really dependent on in terms of what is going into the production of that music.
Okay, I want to round this up. We'll go from Andrew all across. I want each of you to please tell us here, what is the one thing we need to do to increase local music in productions in Eastern Africa?
To increase You mean to increase the
use of,
the use
as
of-
opposed to these libraries that are online and free and what have you. Andrew, from your perspective, what do we need to do as an industry?
Okay, from my perspective, the moment I started using local music in my productions, other artists started approaching me and asking me, can we be part of this for your next one? So from my perspective, I think when you have different mediums, I think it's a matter of exposure sometimes, because sometimes, and I'm not speaking generally, but sometimes artists might feel that if my music does not play on radio, then what use is it? They think that's really the end goal, and without that, they have not really fulfilled anything. But there are so many other platforms. For example, the YouTube videos. If a YouTube video gets 100 million views and your song is, and is the underlying piece of music there, that's more exposure than you'll get on radio easily. So I think if people can be exposed to the different opportunities beyond, what they perceive as the mainstream media, that will encourage people. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So basically being more open-minded as an industry to try different forms of medium as well, yeah?
Exactly.
Fantastic, thank you. Sarah, your one thing.
My one thing. My one thing is, I think it's around creativity. I think we all need to be able to now make sure that whatever it is that we do stands out from the rest. Yeah. So whatever it is that we are creating, and it goes for also us film and TV producers, and it's the same thing with agencies. You do a communication that stands out. So even in terms of music, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that it stands out. And like Andrew said, we need to stop thinking within this box. This is how our music has been sounding all this time. Now we need to be able to leap from there and give Kenyans something different. And like I said, as Kenyans, we also need to now support our own a lot more. And I'll give an example. It took one local TV station here to say, look, we are just doing local, isn't it? And what did Kenyans do? Kenyans started enjoying and embracing our local content. So it just needs each and every one of us to stand to say, you know what, we are going to embrace our local and support a lot more of our local content. And if you look at all the other free-to-air TV stations, what have they done? They have copied the same thing, isn't it? And it's working. The viewership has grown. So it's the same thing with our music. We need to be able, number one, yes, let's be a bit more creative, but let's also support, our own here in Kenya.
Thank you, Sarah. Josephine, you're a guest, so you've only been here for a day or 2 days, but just observing from South Africa into Eastern Africa, what do you think we need to do to increase our use of local music?
There's a song that I actually remember. It's a Kenyan song. It's called Mos Mos. I think it was by Bomba Train a long time ago.
Yeah.
I used to love that song. And how I became aware of that song was a friend of mine, moved to Johannesburg from Kenya, and she brought some of her, music, culture, and shared it all with us. And I think in Africa right now, there's a lot of collaborations that is not just happening within the continent, but also co-creation globally. So I personally like to be exposed to more East African music. I'm aware of West African music. I'm aware of South African music. And I really think that the opportunities through collaboration, I think it's a matter of making contact. It's a matter of having more of these kind of, events that inspire collaboration, because through collaboration, that's how we become more aware and we are able to share and grow more and teach each other. So that's really my, from an observer's point of view, that's what I really think will help to increase the use of our local music.
Thank you. We've just ticked one of our boxes as ONGEA, because one of ONGEA's objectives is to export music from Eastern Africa. I hope you'll be placing orders soon. The South African office has all our stuff. Musyoka.
For me, personally, I think as creators and content creators, we need to be more accountable. We need to be more open to the business aspect of music. Because I see the biggest problem we have, even when I start interacting with songwriters, most of them want to be famous. Fame does not pay rent. You need to start looking at music as a business, yeah? And stop thinking that everybody wants to exploit you.
Yeah? So you tend to be very closed and very narrow-minded in what music can open for you. Before I got my first big placement in a product or in a commercial, I had like 4, 5, 6 for free. Yeah? Not necessarily free, but next to nothing. But it was a way of me broadening my vision and seeing there's an opportunity here. Let me create a business model that I'm approachable and I'm able to satisfy a client's need. So instead of being very close-minded and thinking, oh, I'll just make a song, I'll perform it, download it on Skiza, you have to, music can be used in very many ways. Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you. So it's all about the importance of creating those relationships with your clients and with agencies, yeah? Yes. Yeah. Isaac, your one thing.
My one thing in a big way is, you see, this question many years ago would have been answered differently. Coming from a digital background, I feel like with the digital space, there are more opportunities now for guys to put their work out there. I feel there is no excuse. I feel also sometimes the challenge of us, particularly young people, is the fact that we are more of a microwave generation, and so we expect really quick results. But and this particularly now to the answer to from one of the gentlemen here, if we could only be consistent in putting out our work out there, then there's more likeliness that people are going to actually pick it up. I know of a gentleman on YouTube who what he simply does, he's pretty much Musyoka 10 years ago, but he's quickly moving faster than probably Musyoka has done. And what he does is simply picks ads randomly from across the world. He brings them into his own studio and then plays for those ads the way he would have played for them if that brief was his. And so companies have picked him up and said, wait, we actually did this ad. It was done by somebody else, but we like how you did it. His is just a parody account. But now people are starting to recognize his work and they say, you know what, you're the guy we want. One of the guys and the organizations I feel like is absent on this panel, which I feel probably next year we should consider them, is Google, which of course YouTube is under them. And right at the back end of YouTube, you find their library called Creator Studio. And because YouTube knows that people are really big on content creation at the moment, particularly digitally, what they've done is that they've provided a free library for people like Gabantu and many other creators in this room to use. But when you go on that library and you see, because they have like moods, sad, angry, etc., when you choose sad, you don't find anything from this side of the world. So many times you're doing something that is local and you want a very local feel and sound, but you don't find it. So I guess also maybe, I don't know who's the right person, I don't know if it's PHAT, but to have some sort of like collaboration between people like Google and the local producers who are here, who can then put their own local sounds on those kind of platforms. But I feel like, I know this might not sound like an immediate answer, but I feel like the power to get our work out there right now in this digital space lies within our hands. Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac. So it's basically getting our work out there to as many people as possible. Yeah. Thank you, David. Your one thing.
Stop fighting with each other. I think to build on what Eric was saying, sign a split sheet. Be clear. Appoint one person to speak on behalf of the recording, one person on behalf of the songwriters. Make your music easy to license.
Thank you. Thank you to our panel, David Alexander, Shia, South Africa, Isaac Gabantu from Kenya, Eric Musyoka, Decimal Records, Josephine Sebesho, first time I said your last name, Janong, Sound Design, Sarah Migwi, Protel Studios, thank you, and of course, Andrew Kaggia. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Thank you to the audience. You've been fantastic. We're going to take 5-10 minutes break, and then we're back for the showcases. Showcases run until about 10:30 tonight. We have about 8 of them, and they are performing for a slot to perform at Reeperbahn Festival in Germany and the KZN Music and Bizo in South Africa later on this year. So come back in about 5-10 minutes and enjoy the show. Thank you.